What's up, family? All right, in this video, I'm going to break down exactly why you have to change the way you think. You have to start thinking like a bank if you're going to win in this thing called generational wealth. So, in this video, I'm going to break down 6 reasons why you have to become something different than you are today in order to have in order to do the things that you need to do tomorrow in order to have the things that you want in the future. All right, so let's tap right into this bad boy. I'm super, super excited. So let me pull up my notes here and we are going to rock and roll, family. This call is going to be super powerful for you guys. All right, let's just jump right in here to it. Most people think that the safest way to build wealth is to put their money in the bank. This is wrong, wrong, wrong. Putting your money in the bank, you will never get ahead. And here's the deal: when you start to think like the bank, banks don't get rich by saving, they get rich by lending. So let's break this down here for a quick second. We just completed our last boot camp here, and one of the first questions I asked on day one is this: where do you store your money? Where do you save your money? Right. So outside of the random person saying under the mattress or in a safe, right? Most people store their money in the banks, right? And I asked the question: so what kind of interest are you earning on that money that you're storing in the bank, right? And it varies, right? But all the way from low as 0.01% to 1. And then every once in a while, you have some banks who are paying like a high yield savings, right? And maybe they're paying 3.5, 4% today. Well, here's the deal: a lot of banks are paying less than 1%. This is just the fact of the matter. And I said, so, question for you: have you ever walked into a bank and said, hey, I noticed that my account is earning less than 1%? Bank, could you please tell me and show me where you store your money? Do you store your money in the same sorry account making less than 1%? I think you would be mind blown to the answer of this, right? Because there's going to be some folks at the bank level who will not know the answer to this, right? It's almost like the biggest secret in plain sight going on. It's the wildest thing, right? So here's the deal: if the bank isn't storing their money in the same account that they're offering you, then the question bears to be, well, bank, where do you store your money? Right? Great question to ask. So that's how we started this off. So this is what we teach inside our 5-day financial freedom boot camp: is we teach the participants how to start to recognize how the bank moves, how the bank where the bank stores their money, how the bank makes their money, and what the bank does with their money, so that you can start to duplicate what the banks are doing. And this is a game changer for you, right? So if you're parking your cash in an account earning less than point like 1% or 0.01%, imagine this: you're putting your money in there at the bank, learning less than 1%. You go to the same bank and say, hey, can I get a loan for a mortgage? And they're like, yeah, we'll charge you 6, 7, 8%. But they're only paying you 1%. Even better, if you go to that same bank and ask for a credit card, right? That credit card interest is probably between 15, 20, 25%. So listen to this for a second, right? And this is why you have to start to think like the bank, right? If the bank is lending money, is borrowing money from you, because that's what your deposits are. When you make a deposit in the bank, you are lending the bank money. Never even thought about it that way. You have a savings account, you have a short-term loan with the bank. If you have a money market account, a checking account, and you're earning interest, you have given the bank a short-term loan. So you've given the bank a short-term loan at 1%. Then when you turn right around and say, hey bank, can I get some money to go buy me a house? They're like, yeah, we'll lend you money at like 6 or 7%. This has got to be the biggest hustle on the planet Earth, right? Let that sink in for a second. So you have to start to think like the bank. You have to start to reprogram the way you view money, start to think like the bank and do like the bank, and move away from being a customer and a consumer, right, and a borrower, and move into being the bank, move into being the financial institution, move into being a lender and a creator of wealth. This is what we have been teaching inside our 5-day financial freedom boot camp. So here's the deal, family. Let me break down a couple things here for you. Wealthy people never act like the customer in the bank equation. They set themselves up to be the bank. And even if it's being the bank with their money, let me give you a quick example what I mean by this right now. Here recently, I functioned as the lender. Had a friend of mine reach out to me, want to borrow about $8,000. What I did is I took money from my HELOC that I got at the bank, where I'm paying, say, 7.5, 8%. And then I lend the money to him at 15% and and a 5% origination fee. So at a 5% origination fee and 15%, that is 20%. So I'm charging 20% on this money. I'm paying the bank 8% on this money, and I'm making what's that math on there? 20 minus 8. I'm making 12% on the money. I'm making more money on that money. I'm making more money on that transaction than the bank is making on me. And I'm helping the borrower out and giving them access to cash that they need to do some things in their life. So we're creating a win win situation. So I started to think like the bank, right? That's how you start to think like the bank and how you start to position yourself. Customers deposit money. And when they deposit those money, they lose control and they don't keep up with inflation and don't earn really good interest. Banks lend the same way, right? Lend the same money multiple times, controls the terms, and earns interest on money coming and going. Let that sink in. All right. So let me get into the value today. The 6 reasons you have to start to think like the bank. So the first reason you have to start to think like the bank is this: control. Banks don't ask for permission to use your money. They dictate the terms. You need to have that same control over your money. Well, Perry, what do you mean control? Went and you deposited $10,000, $100,000 into the bank. When you log on to your bank account, you see a journal entry that says, "Yes, I have 100,000 in the bank. Yes, I have 10,000 in the bank." So, quick question for you: is your 10,000, 20,000, 100,000 sitting in the bank in their vaults? No. That is a journal entry that says this is a journal that this is what you have deposited in the bank, and this we're paying you interest on. Then the banks, who are only required to leave 10% of their deposits actually at the bank, then goes out and lends out 90% of what you put in. So if you put in 100,000, they're lending out 90. Ah, let that sink in for a second, right? So you need to position yourself in the same situation where you can store money someplace and still have control over it, have some control over the interest that it earns, and also to have access to those dollars so that you can actually go out and make money the same way that I did, right? Functioning as the bank. Reason number two, you have to be able to you have to change the way you think and focus on cash flow first. So here's the deal. We've been coached, we've been taught that, hey, freedom only comes after you store your money, invest your money over a long period of time, and then one day, hopefully, prayerfully, you have enough money to live off of. That is called accumulation. We've been taught that you have to accumulate your way to financial freedom. In order for you to be financially free, you got to squirrel away as much money and much pennies and coins and nickels and dimes and dollars and cents, right? So that one day you accumulate enough to live off of, right? Do banks focus on accumulation? No. You know what banks focus on? Banks focus on cash flow. Where can we get the most cash flow today? So let me ask you a question. Would you rather be looking at an account statement and be like, "Oh, I'm growing my money," or would you rather be looking at a bank statement saying, "Oh, this is the cash flow that is coming in"? When you start to understand that financial freedom is cash flow and not accumulation, because you can have a whole bunch of money accumulated, but if that money isn't being converted into cash flow so that you can live off of, it's just a number that you're looking at on paper. I don't want to look at numbers on paper. I want to look at balances in my accounts. All right. So here's the deal. reason number two, you have to start to think like the bank. You have to start to focus on cash flow first. Focus on cash flow first. Number three, you have to learn this word. You have to fall in love with this word. And this word is called leverage, right? Banks just don't use their money, they use your deposits to create more wealth. Leverage is the secret sauce. Leverage is the secret sauce. This is the bank's magic secret, right? This is the no the sleight of hand. What's going on? Banks take our deposits, only required to leave 10% there, then they lend out 90%. Then they put those dollars into assets that they can actually use as collateral to borrow against to get access to more money. So, what they're doing is they have figured out that they can make money in their left hand pocket and their right hand pocket on the same dollar. They are using leverage. They are using leverage and arbitrage, right? So the arbitrage is simply, hey, we're going to give Perry 1% on his savings account, and he's going to be damn happy about it. And then while we're giving him 1% on his savings account, when Perry comes in and asks for a $500,000 loan, we're going to charge him 7%. That if that is not the dang on win-win, how in the world is that even possible, right? So that's how that piece works, right? And then when you look at leverage and you start to learn where banks store their money, if you go research tier one capital and bank owned life insurance, you'll start to see that banks actually put part of their tier one capital, the money that they absolutely cannot lose, into bank owned life insurance where earning a way better interest rate than you're earning on your savings and checking account. And not only do they continue to earn that interest, but in the event that they actually need to bust a move or make an investment, they can leave their money inside the bank on life insurance, and the insurance company will give them access to a line of credit or a loan to go out and buy a building or start a business or invest or write checks and bonus checks and things of that nature while still earning interest on their money. Reason number three, you have to learn how to start thinking like a bank is leverage. Reason number four, you have to start thinking like the bank. Banks always make money on the spread, right? So that's what I've kind of alluded to, right? Borrow at 1%, lend at 6, right? This is needs to be a mantra that you understand. You need to start to get your head wrapped around this math, right? I do it. I'm doing it right now, right? With the loan that I talked about, but also too, I'm making my money on the spread when we invest in real estate. We have a closing today. My wife has bought another rental property, right? So we close on this property today. So I'm making money on the spread. Okay, on my hard money loan, right? I'm paying, let's call it, 10, 11%. That's fine because that 10, 11% equates to a payment of about 900 bucks. We're going to rent the property out. Think this is a three-bedroom at about 15 to 1700 bucks. So, yes, I don't, interest rate is double digit. Who cares? The payment is 900 bucks. We're bringing in, let's call it 1500 on the low end. Let me pull out my calculator just to make sure I got the math right. 1500 minus 900 is 600 bucks. We're making $600 positive cash flow using the same thought process that the banks use, getting paid on the spread. That's how the banks get paid. So whether you're paying 20%, who cares if you're paying 20% interest for money if you're using that money to go put it in something or invest in something that's going to make you 100%. You're still making in that scenario right there 80% on the money. But you have to start to think like the bank. You have to study how banks make their money. Reason number five why you have to start to think like the bank: risk management. Banks protect themselves with collateral, insurance, and guarantees, and you can adopt the same tools to reduce your risk in your wealth building. Let me give a real life example that I'm doing right now. We recently had a client who wanted to invest a large amount of money in cryptocurrency, about 600,000 into some crypto. Now, we had the conversation about the risk associated with crypto, and they said, "Yep, I've studied this particular strategy. I'm going into it. I said, fine. Well, if you made your mind up that this is where you're going to go, this is fine. But my job is to help you. So I'm going to actually think like a bank for you. And what I did for this client was we put the money into a properly structured, optimally funded cash value policy where we put money in on day one, 300,000 in day one, and they had access to about 290,000 later on that week. So no, they didn't have to wait 5 years to get cash value. We're not talking about those type of policies, but we put the money into a properly structured, optimally funded early cash value policy where now those dollars are growing uninterrupted. So we dropped the $300,000 in. So that money is still earning a guaranteed rate of return and a dividend. On the other side, they were then able to access that money via a policy loan and go invest in crypto. Why did we do this? We were thinking like the bank. We reduced the risk on the money, his principal is still growing uninterrupted, earning a fixed rate of return. In addition to that, getting dividends as long as this insurance company keeps paying dividends, which they've paid over 150 years. So we feel pretty good about it, right? And then they use the policy loan, not his money, not his principal, the bank's money to then go and invest in crypto. Now, if the crypto goes up, it's a win-win. But what I love most about it is if the crypto goes down. Because if the crypto goes to zero, that client can look me and I can look that client in the face and be like, well, that play didn't work out. But guess what? We still have our principal earning interest inside your account. In addition to that, we added another $3 to $4 million and tax-free death benefit for your family. So we still sealed the deal and protected the family, kept your money working for you, and provided legacy money for your children. That is called a win-win. That's how banks think, right? Warren Buffett has one of the best quotes out about investing. You know, rule number one to investing: don't lose money. Rule number two: don't forget rule number one. What if you start investing like the banks, but you first protect the bag, you first secure the bag, then you grow the bag? Wow, that is called risk management. That's why you have to start to think like a bank. Reason number six, you have to start to think like the bank. Banks keep money moving. They don't let money sit there and get stale and get mold on it like cheese and things of that nature. They don't let it sit idle. Money is in motion. When money is in motion, it creates wealth. They're not letting their dollars just sit there and be like, oh, well, we're just gonna let our money sit here and let it earn 1% because that's our emergency fund. No, they're taking those dollars, restructuring, saying how those dollars are categorized, put it into something that's going to give them some type of guaranteed rate of return, and then using leverage to then go out and speed up the value of that dollar. So now they can be like, hey, we use this play to go out and create cash flow. Because ultimately, that is the name of the game. And it's so wild when you start to think about it. The name of the game for every profitable business is cash flow. That's why they have a profit and loss statement. That's why the value of the business, oh Lord, I'm about to have a bar. If the value of a business is based upon the profit and loss statement, how much money you have coming in versus how much money you have going out, what's left is profit. And that is how you determine the value of a business. And you might say, hey, your value of your business is 10 times that multiple, right? That's how business determines if it's valuable. How do you know if your household, because your household is, how do you know if your household business is available? Have you done a household P&L to say, this is what's coming in, this is what's going out, this is how valuable our household is? This is why you have to start to think like the bank. You have to start thinking like the bank. You have to start thinking like a corporation. Do you have a household P&L? Do you have a household balance sheet? Are you creating passive income? Can you point to your spouse or your partner or even look yourself in the mirror and be like, hey, this month, because of the moves I've made, we're bringing in an additional 2-3 grand of free cash flow from buying assets, cash flow producing assets, right? Oh my goodness, Joe, this is why you have to start to think like the bank. Banks do not let money sit idle and get stale and grow mold. They are putting money in motion to drive cash flow and profitability, and you should do the same. But I know you might be thinking, but Perry, I don't have millions like the bank do. You don't need millions because guess what? The bank didn't start off with millions. You don't need millions. You do need the mindset and the model. And that's what we teach inside our boot camp. If you're looking to create wealth, you undoubtedly are going to have to start to think like the bank and start to handle your money from a corporate finance standpoint other than a consumer personal finance standpoint. And that is what we show inside our financial freedom boot camp is how to set up your own mini family bank with the exact same principles, right? Oh goodness, y'all, we're gonna get to it. All right, so let me kind of just share, a quick story here. We have so many testimonials coming in and things of that nature, right? We recently had a client join our mentorship program, and in day one working with us, we identified where they had over seven access to over $700,000 in capital that they didn't know they had. They had equity locked in their home that they didn't think about accessing. They had access to capital via their investment portfolio where they could actually get a loan against a line of credit against the investment portfolio. They had access to money inside of a cash value policy that wasn't even on the radar. When we added up, it's like, man, you got 46,000 coming from here. You got another 150,000 coming from here, right? You got another, 400,000 coming from here. When we added it up in that first half an hour of meeting with that client, we identified $725,000 of capital that they didn't even know they had access to. And they're like, oh my gosh, Perry, what should I do with this? Said, hey, you can now go out shopping for cash flow. You know why you need access to capital? You need access to capital, not to go buy red bottoms and Louis Vuitton and cars and things of that nature. And here's the deal: I'm not hating. I'm wearing a Louis Vuitton belt right now. Yes, I drive a Range Rover, but that's not why I want access to capital. I want access to capital so I can go shopping for cash flow. It was nothing that made me more proud at the end of last year when I looked over to my wife and said, hey, you have over $350,000 to go shopping for cash flow. So when we go shopping, we go shopping. And then we let that cash flow fund our lifestyle. This is how you have to start thinking, family. This is why you have to start to think like the bank, right? All right. So I think I shared everything. I'm looking at my notes here. Yep. I got everything here that I want to share with you guys. So your takeaway is think like the bank. If you want to start thinking like the bank, let me give you a cheat code. Go to thinklikethebank.com. Plug in with us. Go to thinklikethebank.com. Get plugged in and we'll show you exactly, you know what I'm saying? You have different resources in there where you can start to transform the way that you think because you're not going to start thinking like a bank or running your business, running your personal finances the way a corporation runs their finances because you have been conditioned for multiple decades to do something a certain way. You have been conditioned to put your money into the bank while the bank is doing the exact opposite of what they're telling you to do. Let that sink in for a second. So you have to start to recondition how you think about money, but more importantly, how you think about you. And I'll leave you guys with this statement. Whether you have a LLC or not, you are a business. If you have a household, and if that household could be one of one, just you, or you have a spouse, or you have a spouse and kids, or you have a spouse and kids and extended family, understand you are a business. But the question is, are you functioning like a CEO? Because a CEO's job is to have, I love this, ruthless prioritization. You are the CEO of your household business. And the most important skill set you can have as a CEO is ruthless prioritization. And part of that ruthless prioritization is getting crystal clear that the goal is to create a profitable business, or in this case, a profitable household. And profit is determined by this is what I have coming in, this is what I have going out, and then this is the profit that I have to go out and start to build and buy my time back in the form of wealth. If this video was valuable to you, make sure you like it. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't meet any of these weekly calls and trainings. And be sure to share this with somebody. Share this with every family member you have. And we'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.